In the landscape of human memory, the Neanderthal exists as a caricature, a hunched and brutish figure dwelling in the shadows of our own ancestry. Their heavy brows and powerful frames have become subconscious symbols of a primitive mind, devoid of artistry or intellect. But the fossil record, unearthed over decades of patient inquiry, tells a different story, a narrative that dismantles the myth and reveals a people of profound complexity. Their story begins some 500,000 years ago, with a great migration of their ancestors out of the warmth of Africa and into the vast, untested continent of Europe. Here, under the influence of a harsher climate, they were forged in the crucible of the advancing ice ages. Over millennia, they were sculpted into the form we now recognize as Homo neanderthalensis, a name derived from the Neander Valley in Germany, where their first identified remains were discovered in the mid-19th century. The unforgiving conditions of Ice Age Europe demanded a new kind of human. They became compact and immensely powerful, standing no more than 165 centimeters tall. Theirs was a body built for endurance, barrel-chested, with wide shoulders and short, powerful limbs, a low center of gravity perfect for navigating treacherous terrain. Their faces, framed by prominent brow ridges, featured wide, flat noses, a remarkable biological innovation designed to warm the frigid air before it reached their lungs. Far from being simple brutes, these people possessed a formidable intellect. They were master hunters, their lives an endless nomadic cycle dictated by the great herds of horse, deer, and bison. For 2 or 3 weeks, and in this very specialization lay the seeds of their demise. Their diet was overwhelmingly dependent on meat. This reliance made them vulnerable. An unsuccessful hunt, a shift in animal migration, or displacement into less bountiful territory by new arrivals meant starvation. In the most desperate times, some groups resorted to the grim necessity of cannibalism. Their competitors, the anatomically modern humans known as Cro-Magnons, possessed a crucial advantage: a more varied diet. They could subsist on plant life when hunting failed, and their leaner, less muscular bodies required significantly less protein to fuel. The difference was starkest in the hunt itself. Neanderthals relied on raw power and incredible courage, engaging their prey in intimate, brutal contests. They confronted enormous beasts in close-quarters combat, a strategy that left their skeletons riddled with fractures and healed wounds akin to those of modern rodeo riders. Our own ancestors, by contrast, relied more on collective cunning. They formed larger groups, orchestrating complex drive hunts, using intellect as their primary weapon rather than sheer force. For the Neanderthal, every hunt was a life or death gamble. For our ancestors, it was a calculated risk. Their story is not one of failure, but of a profound, alternate way of being human, a testament to survival in a world of ice and stone. They were a people perfectly adapted to their environment, until that environment, and the competition within it, changed forever, leaving their spectre to haunt the very edge of our own becoming. In the unforgiving world of Ice Age Europe, survival was a brutal calculus, and for the Neanderthals, the equation was particularly harsh. The fossil record whispers a grim story. The attrition among their males was substantially higher than that of their rivals, the arriving Cro-Magnons. Life was a constant, violent negotiation with a hostile land and its formidable beasts. Yet this portrait of brutal existence is incomplete. Within this narrative of struggle lies a profound and unexpected testament to resilience and humanity. Neanderthals, it appears, were masters of mending. Their very skeletons, larger and more robust than our own ancestors, were built for endurance. But among the remains unearthed by paleontologists, a remarkable pattern emerges. Individuals who survived not just single, but multiple severe fractures. Broken limbs, crushed ribs, injuries that would spell certain death for a solitary creature, had been given the time and security to heal. This is not the mark of a species that abandons its weak. It is the silent, bony evidence of care, of a community that tended to its infirm, that supported its wounded members through their convalescence. It speaks of a world where compassion was not a luxury, but a strategy for survival, rooted in the deep bonds of family and clan. Their inner world, too, was richer than we once imagined. There are tantalizing hints of a dawning spirituality, of minds grappling with the great mysteries of life and death. The careful arrangement of bodies in graves suggests the first stirrings of burial rituals, a recognition that the end of a life was an event of significance. Other findings point toward rites of passage, ceremonies marking the transition from one stage of life to another. And the very architecture of their larynx hints at the capacity for primitive speech. They could communicate, sharing knowledge, coordinating hunts, and reinforcing the social ties that allowed them to care for their injured kin. But a shadow loomed over their world, the relentless pace of their own biology. Scientists now believe a Neanderthal was a fully independent adult by the age of 10, and by 20, they were entering old age. In stark contrast, a Cro-Magnon of the same era would not be considered old for another 20 years. This accelerated life cycle was a profound disadvantage, limiting the time for knowledge to be passed down from one generation to the next, a crucial element in the long game of extinction. For decades, this perception of a short-lived, intellectually simpler people colored our view of their technology. It was widely believed that Neanderthals were incapable of inventing sophisticated tools from bone or ivory on their own. The consensus held that any such artifacts found at their sites were merely crude imitations, copied from the more advanced Cro-Magnons who were beginning to push into their territories. Over the last few decades, however, a series of discoveries has forced a radical rewriting of that story. The evidence remains sparse, a frustrating puzzle with most of its pieces missing. But the pieces we have are revolutionary. A bone spear point, unearthed at the Abric Romani site in Spain, was dated to 50,000 years ago. From the Chagirskaya cave in the Altai Mountains, tools emerged that may have been used for art, for retouching drawings dating to a similar period. While intriguing, these artifacts existed in a temporal grey zone, a time when contact with our own ancestors was possible. But the definitive challenge to the old narrative was found far from this potential crossover, deep within the Mesmaïskaya cave in Russia's Krasnodar region. In the year 2003, archaeologists pulled a remarkable object from a layer of earth belonging to the late Paleolithic. It was a bone point, approximately 90 millimeters long and 6 millimeters wide. Its age was staggering, between 70 and 80,000 years old. This was long before our ancestors had established a significant presence in Europe. This tool was unequivocally, indisputably Neanderthal. It is, to this day, the most ancient bone spear point ever attributed to them. Analysis revealed a level of craftsmanship that shattered old prejudices, fashioned from the dense bone technique to improve its piercing power. And along its surface, scientists found traces of a primitive adhesive, a binder crafted from bitumen used to secure the point to a wooden shaft. This was not the work of a copycat. This was the product of a thinking, planning, and innovative mind. The silence of Mesmaïskaya cave has spoken volumes, revealing not a failed rough draft of humanity, but a parallel lineage, intelligent and resourceful. They were a people who hare prey into complex, deadly technology. They were not a simple prelude to our own story, but the protagonists of their own epic, a saga whose final chapters we are only now beginning to comprehend. It bears the marks of a life lived with purpose. Scratches and worn surfaces tell a story not of ceremony or ritual, but of function. This is no idle carving, no symbolic offering to unseen forces. This bone point was a tool of survival, honed and wielded in the great hunts of the Ice Age. its repeated use etched into its very substance. The true marvel, however, lies not in its use, but in its creation. Its design, the technology behind its fashioning, is this single elegant piece of worked bone, is evidence of a profound cognitive leap. It suggests that at least some groups of Neanderthals, isolated in their ancient world, developed a mastery of this material entirely on their own terms, independent of any influence from their distant African cousins. This should not, perhaps, come as a surprise. The tradition of shaping bone is ancient, a thread stretching back into the deepest corridors of time. In the famous Olduvai Gorge of Africa, the earliest bone implements have been dated to an astonishing 1.5 million years ago. They were crafted by hands that belonged to neither Neanderthal nor Cro-Magnon, but to their distant, shared ancestors. The material itself was an inheritance, but the methods, the refined and specialized techniques, were an innovation. And among the vast catalogue of artifacts left to us by the Neanderthals, we find a pattern of startling ingenuity. They were not merely users of technology, but pioneers. In some cases, the evidence now suggests they were the very first. Consider a substance as humble as birch tar. For millennia, humanity has used this potent black adhesive and sealant. Yet the oldest, most definitive evidence of its manufacture leads us not to early Homo sapiens, but to Neanderthal encampments. Two small, unassuming lumps of this material, weighing a mere 83 and 135 milligrams, have been unearthed. Their ages are staggering, 43,000 and 85,000 years old. They were created long before the great exodus of Cro-Magnons from Africa had reached these European landscapes. By modern standards, the production of birch tar is not overwhelmingly complex. But for our primeval relatives, it represented a genuine technological breakthrough, a mastery of chemistry. The process was a slow, deliberate alchemy. Bark, stripped from birch trees, was carefully placed within a pit. Access to oxygen was restricted, the bark smothered under earth and stone. Then, a fire was lit, its temperature meticulously maintained for a specific duration. In this oxygen-starved heat, the bark would not burn, but break down, its resinous essence slowly weeping out to be collected. It was a multi-stage process demanding foresight, patience, and a deep understanding of cause and effect. The resulting tar was a prehistoric superglue, a versatile compound used for a vast array of tasks. It secured stone points to wooden shafts, creating more durable and lethal weapons. It served as a protective sealant, a waterproofing agent that prevented the decay of wooden tools and handles. It was even used in the treatment of hides and as a key ingredient in other binding agents. And yet, a question lingers in the silent dust of these ancient sites. Was this knowledge universal among the Neanderthal peoples, a shared cultural touchstone? Or was it the secret of a select few brilliant groups, a localized spark of genius that never spread? For now, the archaeological record holds its tongue. From the tangible world of tools and adhesives, we journey into the far more elusive landscape of the Neanderthal mind. For decades, the capacity for symbolic thought, for art, was believed to be the exclusive domain of our own species. But deep within the caves of Spain, this certainty has begun to fracture. On ancient stone walls, simple lines, dots, and stenciled hands whisper a different story. Geochemical dating has placed these markings between 65,000 and 74,000 years in the past. At that time, in that place, there were no Homo sapiens. The only artists who could have painted these walls were Neanderthals. The evidence remains contentious, debated fiercely by scholars, but if confirmed, the implications are profound. It would mean that the urge to record one's existence, to create symbols that transcend the everyday, is not solely our own. It suggests that in the firelit gloom of their stone shelters, Another kind of human also looked at a blank wall and felt the need to make a mark, to say, "I was here." These faint pigments are not just paintings, they are echoes of a mind reaching for meaning, a soul grappling with the abstract. They are fragments of a lost world of thought, challenging us to reconsider the very definition of humanity. Deep within the Earth's embrace, where light has not touched for millennia, the walls whisper stories. Geometric patterns, the haunting outlines of animal forms, and the indelible imprints of hands pressed against cold stone. For a long time, we believed these were our stories alone. But the evidence now suggests these ancient galleries could not have been the exclusive domain of our own ancestors. Another human hand was at work. This re-evaluation of our past extends from the symbolic to the profoundly practical. Consider the humble grinding stone, the quern. It is the very foundation of settled life, the tool that unlocks the full nutritional power of grains. The oldest of these implements, unearthed from a Neanderthal encampment, date back between 39 and 43,000 years. Yet this discovery is not a simple testament to their ingenuity. It is the heart of a deep anthropological puzzle. For this was a time of great change. A new people, the Cro-Magnons, our direct ancestors, was sweeping across Europe. The two humanities coexisted, and so the question hangs in the air, thick as the dust of ages. Who was the innovator? Who was the observer? Did the Neanderthals pioneer this crucial technology only for it to be witnessed and adopted by the newcomers? Or was it the other way around, a piece of our own heritage learned by a rival species in the twilight of their existence? The lines blur, leaving us to wonder about the nature of their final interactions. There is, however, one invention that we can attribute to them with near certainty, an innovation that we carry with us to this day: clothing. The climate of Europe during the late glacial period was a landscape of brutal cold, a world sculpted by ice and wind. Despite their mastery of fire and the construction of hide shelters, survival without an additional, personal layer of insulation would have been impossible. Contrary to popular caricature, Neanderthals were not covered in inns of the beasts they hunted. Initially, it was a simple act, a minimally processed fur draped for warmth. But over tens of thousands of years, this crude necessity evolved into a sophisticated craft. Hides were scraped, treated, and made supple. Using bone awls, they punched holes through the tough material, lacing it together with threads of sinew or rough leather cord. Their garments became more functional, more fitted, a true second skin against the unforgiving elements. Later finds suggest these creations were not merely practical, they were decorated, a canvas for self-expression. Pinpointing the exact birth of this technology is difficult, but estimates place its origins somewhere in the vast expanse of time between 170,000 and 83,000 years ago. From the practical, their minds reached for the symbolic. Small bone fragments, etched with patterns by Neanderthal hands, appear in the archaeological record with surprising frequency, some dating back an astonishing 300,000 years. Are these deliberate designs the first stirrings of abstract thought? Or are they merely the incidental marks of some forgotten task? The ambiguity is maddening. But by 51,000 years ago, the evidence becomes undeniable. At one of their encampments, a necklace was discovered, a deliberate construction of drilled bones from various animals. This was no simple trinket. Such an object speaks of a complex inner world. The presence of this necklace or other adornments may have signaled the status of its wearer, their role within the group, or perhaps it served a purpose in rituals we can no longer comprehend. It represents the monumental leap from mere survival to the declaration of identity. And then there is the most enigmatic and controversial artifact of all. From the Divya Babe cave in Slovenia comes an object that challenges the very definition of what it meant to be human. It is a piece of a cave bear's femur, roughly 43,000 years old, bearing a series of carefully spaced, circular holes. Its discoverers declared it the world's oldest flute. The claim ignited a firestorm of debate. Is it possible that these people, so long dismissed as brutish and unintelligent, possessed the soul of a musician? Music, after all, is a defining human trait. Our most distant ancestors surely used their voices to create rhythmic sequences, to weave simple, haunting melodies from the air itself. Could this bone be the first instrument designed to accompany that primal song? Or is it, as skeptics argue, simply the result of a carnivore's bite, its teeth puncturing the bone in a coincidental pattern? The object remained silent, offering no definitive fragment of a lost world. These are more than artifacts. They are echoes of a mind, a culture, a different kind of humanity that once shared our planet. And in their silence, they pose the most profound question of all. Faded from the earth. By striking objects with hands or sticks, a rhythm could be summoned from the ancient world. Yet when scientists turn to the famed Neanderthal flute, a profound silence answers. From this ancient hollowed-out bone, no sound that we might recognize as music has yet been coaxed. For now, the official title of first wind instrumentalists remains with our direct ancestors, Homo sapiens. But the genetic story tells of a far deeper intimacy. Despite a gulf of cultural and physical differences, Neanderthals were remarkably close to our forebears. These two branches of humanity met, and they produced common offspring. The proof lies not in stone or bone, but within us. Modern genetic analysis confirms that for people of non-African descent, approximately 2% of the genome is of Neanderthal origin. It was they who first possessed the traits of fair skin, blue eyes, and hair of red or russet hues. The Cro-Magnons, arriving from the sun-drenched landscapes of Africa, were dark-skinned and black-haired. Through this ancient mingling, we inherited more than just technology. We received the very features that now gaze back from our mirrors. In the ghost of our own DNA, the echo of a lost people persists, a silent testament that our story was never ours alone.